Hey there, Sherry. Thanks for opting into the video critique. I just opened this up and it glanced over it for a second. And I think you have some things working to your advantage so far. Your columns look nice and tidy. You have some really nice contrasting subheadings. They're a similar font because they do still have serifs. So usually I would encourage you to try to make the contrasting font even more extreme. That might mean if you really like this font, perhaps you could use a sans serif for the body copy. Um, Serif fonts are a little bit easier to read generally, but a lot of magazines nowadays use serif fonts or sans serif fonts for their body copy anyway. So you could be okay. Watch your paragraphs. I'm not sure what's happening here, but you have this interesting spacing over here. And I'm assuming either these are supposed to be their own paragraphs or they're supposed to not be a return at the end. So I'm guessing they are supposed to be their own paragraphs. So just go through, look at your paragraphs, make sure you have your appropriate spacing. I'm fine with you getting rid of these numbers. They're kind of making it, they're a little bit detracting. And so just for purposes of having a nice clean aesthetic, I would probably get rid of those. Watch your amount of spacing between where one component ends and another begins. It's one of the most important things that beginners do is they have one of the most important things to fix that beginners do is sometimes they'll have a type line up perfectly with another element. So see how the edge of your P is almost sitting on this box. You want to avoid things like that. You always want room for the eye to fully travel around one component before it hits another one. So you need to probably move the amount of spacing on this text box to make sure that the amount above it is equal to the amount of spacing you have on the right and the left side. That's one of the settings on your text box. You'll notice that there are some numbers and you can enter something like 0.2, 0.25, and that'll give you a little bit of a buffer here. Okay. I do like that you have this contrasting color. Your color scheme's off to a good start. You probably pulled it from this. You can maybe play around with adding a different color. Let's look at the color wheel here real quick. So you have this kind of neat tealish color. Oh, all right. Didn't necessarily want to go to Amazon. Okay, so let's see. You have this kind of cool teal color that lives in here. Might be fun to bring in something like this cadmium red light, a red orange maybe. That could be kind of a neat extra element to your design. Let's see, that color is living in this to this range. So one of these might look really good. To kind of add a little bit of extra visual element to it because these two colors, they're fine. But this one's a neutral. So really you're kind of with a monochromatic color scheme right now with this teal. So you could perhaps have an extra little bit of a pop by doing a different color for the word rejoice or for your subheadings. Something like that would allow you to kind of have this pop off the page a bit more. One thing I do want to say is you don't have a lot of white space, and it's really important to add in some white space. Usually I try to have my designs have at least 20% white space. Okay, so let's take a look at the assignment here. Here are some good examples. See the amount of white space between where the columns end and the page ends. Look at all that lovely room for your eye to rest. Look at all the room for your eye to rest around this pull quote. Okay. Oh, that's a bad example. We don't want to look at that one. This one has a little bit less white space, but there's still a good amount of white space around the temple. And then this is considered visual white space as well. Okay, so let's look at this design and then let's look at yours. Okay, do you see the amount of difference right off the bat? Oops, in white space. Okay, so that's one major thing I'm going to encourage you to try to implement in your design. Even look at the center of the page. This is where the fold would be, but see how wide of a gutter that is. All right, so that's one thing that's instantly going to help your design feel more contemporary. I would bring your columns in so they're not so close to the edge of the page. I would bring them in a little bit further from the middle as well. Another thing you could do is you could justify your type. Okay, so see how this type, I'll make this a little bit bigger for you. See how this justified type in your paragraph palette is nice straight line here and a straight line here. Now you would get to that by, let me see if there's boop, boop, an example. Oh, these are the options. Okay, it was going to look something like this. Actually, let me put paragraph palette. Okay, so this is what your option is going to come up as. This is what you probably have going right now. See how it's a strong left alignment with a ragged right edge. If you click on something like this, it's going to create these nice box shapes, and you want to have this, so see that little line, how it stops right there, something like that. Okay, now that would make your columns look even more tidy. So the first thing I'm going to do is encourage you to decrease the width and the intensity of your columns on the page so they don't feel like they're overwhelming you when you look at this. Also, your type is actually pretty large. You could probably get away with making your type 1 point smaller, and that will instantly help your design feel a little bit more modern too, and it'll even increase the amount of contrast between your subheadings and your paragraph size, your body copy. Okay, then